Because of how painful it was, it's a huge deal. It's not a trivial experience to go through.
My name is Quaylen, I'm one of the midwives calling from BPAS.
It was the worst pain I've ever been in my life.
It really encourages this idea of abortion happening in secret.
You're somewhere on your own, private, where you're not going to be interrupted. Great.
In any country, any society that doesn't provide easy access to abortion, the problem doesn't go away, it goes underground. As a result of that, when it goes underground, girls and women die.
So this is the main entrance. When you come in, you'll be greeted, asked to clean your hands, and we'll take your temperature as well.
Before the pandemic, you'd come somewhere like this if you needed an abortion.
In here is one of our early medical rooms. So if you require a scan, or if you require your iron level to be tested, this is one of the rooms that you'll be coming into to see the clinician.
But now, that's changed.
I had hot water bottles, painkillers, cups of tea. When the pain got too much, I went upstairs. The stomach cramps were honestly so painful, but it was just so nice to be in the comfort of my own home.
Megan is one of an estimated 100,000 women, the first group in UK history to legally have abortions at home. The law changed temporarily in March 2020 with lockdown, and the change could be set to stay.
It was basically like taking any other medication where you can see the risks and side effects, but with loads of extra hotlines and checklists just to make sure everything was safe.
An at-home abortion is not as it might sound. The vast majority of terminations happen in early pregnancy, so before 10 weeks, which means no surgery is required. So when lockdown hit, telemedical service was set up, which meant that consultations could happen remotely, and pills were posted to women in need.
And these are the pills that arrive through the letterbox. This is mifepristone, which previously had to be taken at a clinic. It ends the life of a fetus. And misoprostol, which is taken 24 to 48 hours later, which expels the pregnancy. By April 2020, a third of all abortions were now happening at home. Just 2 months later, this had jumped to more than half.
The subject of abortion just isn't talked about very much, perhaps because it forces us to confront difficult issues around morality and ethics. But I think it should be talked about. We know that abortions are happening more and more. So I want to find out if our abortion laws are fit for purpose and, crucially, if the pandemic might just have triggered a revolution in abortion access here in the UK.
The Royal College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists has been calling for at-home abortions for years.
If I was organising your early abortion care, I would have to ask you to take the tablets in the clinic, and then you might start bleeding or having cramp and pain and much discomfort and embarrassment on your journey home. This means that women don't have to travel, don't have to be subjected to long waits and delays in order to obtain the abortion.
I'm hiring up the bed, this is just for my back.
We know that for every week that a pregnancy increases in gestation, the risks go up.
I work in an area that has quite a large South Asian population. A lot of young women are not supposed to necessarily be sexually active. If they do get pregnant out of wedlock, that can be, a threat to their home situation.
So there's some cold gel coming.
So especially with COVID, where there's less excuse for people to sometimes be going outside of the home, really, really challenging to justify, taking hours to go somewhere.
Women travel from all over the UK to this abortion clinic in East London.
Can I ask you to confirm your safe word for me, please, your security word?
But they now provide telemedical abortions to 15 to 20 women a week.
Great, thank you very much. I mean, there's very few positives to come from the last year, but I will say that the home use of mifepristone is top of my list. It has meant that it's normalised abortion care for women, basic reproductive health care.
The law change has meant 80% of abortions took place before 8 weeks gestation in 2020, compared with 60% in 2019. Only 0.05% of women will suffer major complications. But 5% of women who have at-home abortions will suffer complications that may need follow-up treatment or surgery. That's been around 96 women every week, or 14 women per day. Women like Sophie. She asked us to change her name so she could remain anonymous.
I'm a nurse and I know a little bit about what's normal, and it was not normal. There was so much blood coming.
Sophie visited an abortion clinic in July 2020 and was allowed to take her abortion pills at home.
I started to get really intense cramping and it was the worst pain I've ever been in my life. I couldn't move from the floor. My friend, who is also a nurse, was checking on me. I begged her to give me more cocodamol and ibuprofen, and then the next morning the bleeding started. The bleeding was really heavy for about three or 4 weeks, I would say.
Eventually, Sophie needed surgery.
One of the most horrific things I think that happened that I wasn't expecting at 5 weeks and 2 days was the stuff that was coming out of me. And I'm sorry for being a bit graphic, but I do think it's our right, actually, as women, to understand what can happen and to have all the information before you make this sort of choice. They say you pass blood clots. I would say there were pieces of, I guess, I don't know if it was placenta.
More and more women want to have access to abortions. In 2019, there were 207,384 in England and Wales, the highest number since records began. Abortion rights have been hard won. It's still actually illegal, although the Abortion Act in 1967 gave women in England, Wales and Scotland legal defences to end a pregnancy. Northern Ireland joined them in 2019. Wendy Savage was one of the first women to qualify as a consultant in obstetrics and gynecology at the London Hospital.
Of course, I'm the last generation of doctors who qualified who saw women dying of abortion in this country. Our politicians don't recognise that if a woman doesn't want to continue with a pregnancy, she will do anything to get rid of it, even if that means she loses her life.
Believe it or not, this house on a quiet residential street in North London is actually the site of the first ever family planning clinic here in the UK. It was opened by Mary Stopes 100 years ago. And of course, lots has happened since then. And it's interesting to think that if the law does change, many women may choose never to step foot in the clinic when accessing an abortion.
And for some, that is controversial. Emily's attended prayer vigils outside abortion clinics and is now opposed to abortions at home.
I don't think there's very much dignified about an abortion alone in lockdown. And I don't think that, we do women any kind of favour when, we encourage this kind of thing to happen behind closed doors. I think actually the whole telemedicine abortion, it really encourages this idea of abortion happening in secret.
Christian Concern tried to legally challenge at-home abortions, but the Court of Appeal dismissed their case. Now they've gone to the Supreme Court with their appeal.
Do you think it trivialises abortion? Do you think it risks making abortion a form of contraception?
Here, somehow as a society, we've got to a place whereby we can send a couple of pills through the post to women that we haven't medically assessed, clinically assessed. We think that we can send them the pills by post, not seeing them. We think we can send them some painkillers, some really strong painkillers, and that it's okay. Giving these pills like it's nothing. It's not nothing. It's huge.
I think that's absolutely crazy that you can't get contraception in the post, but you can get this pill, because this pill is really invasive. This is not like contraception.
We mustn't trivialise this issue. It's life-changing for the mother. She will live with this decision for the rest of her life. And of course it's life-changing for the unborn child that never gets to see life.
While abortion is not a zero-sum choice, it's costly.
Dr. Kate Greasley's written 2 books on the ethics of abortion and is dismissive of such arguments.
At the very, very least, it's quite an inconvenience, but there are lots of other things beyond that. It can be very painful. It requires recovery time, always. It can be emotionally difficult, not necessarily, but it can be. I think so to imagine that women will use this as just a form of contraception, to me suggests a limited comprehension of what abortion is actually like.
Because of how painful it was, it's a huge deal. It's not a trivial experience to go through. And I think just because the pills by post service makes abortion more accessible, I don't think it means that it's easy to terminate a pregnancy.
Thank you for calling Mary Stopes International.
Christian Concern commissioned a mystery client survey which tests the ethical provision of medical products, and it did raise safeguarding concerns.
We've got here that the first date of your last period was the 18th of May.
Yeah, that's right.
And you're pretty sure of that date?
Yeah, I'm sure.
There have been, well-documented cases currently that are, women have been able to access these pills well beyond the 10-week limit, and that there aren't any checks. So actually it's about safeguarding, not just safety of the procedure.
The Royal College of Obstetricians and Gynaecologists says this happens in 0.04% of cases, and it hasn't resulted in any further complications. In a statement, MSI Reproductive Choices said, "We know we can trust women to make decisions about what is best for their individual healthcare needs. The 10-week limit is a regulatory limit in England, but it's arbitrary and not based on safety or evidence."
For some people, telemedicine won't work because of maybe language issues, because of coercive control. It actually might be easier if they say they're popping out to the shops because their phone lines are monitored. For young people who don't necessarily have access to their own phone. So telemedicine cures or helps a lot of problems and barriers, but it's not going to be a solution for everybody.
One important consequence of the temporary change in the law has been the disappearance of illegal abortion pills via the internet.
The demand from women in England and Scotland and Wales has just dropped away. It just doesn't exist anymore.
For Wendy Savage, a pro-choice trailblazer, it's a reminder of the risks women will take to end an unwanted pregnancy.
I suppose the thing that really made me feel so passionate about it was that my own housemaid in Nigeria came to me and said that she was pregnant. She was 17. And I said, well, go home to your parents. I'm sure they will understand. And she went home to her parents. And she came back to Enugu and started to bleed from the mouth. I drove her down to the hospital, got back home, and I got a telephone call and she was dead. And it was so devastating.
The government's considering data from 50,000 telemedical abortions, as well as views from a public consultation on whether they should be made permanent.
I think the trauma that I've suffered, which I'm also shocked about that it's classified as PTSD, has been brought on by the fact I was alone at home and how unprepared I was for what I was going to have to go through. It's left me feeling empty. I'm grief-stricken, but it's a grief that I can't explain.
I don't think I would have felt comfortable experiencing pain like that in a different environment. I think it felt so nice to be at home, so I didn't feel embarrassed. I could just take care of myself. I think I would feel more unsafe if the pills by post service wasn't available, because it was such a safe and simple experience for me.